Welcome to Flash Video Productions Online Interviews. I'm Guy Annable, and today we're joined with Crombie McNeill, master photographer at his residence in Gatineau. In previewing this interview, I was very impressed with the breadth and depth of Crombie McNeill's career. It spans over 40 years, starting at the Hardy Arcade in the Karsh experience, which we hope to talk about today. Leading from that to photojournalism, to Vietnam, and to leading sports journalism, events and affairs, covering prime ministers and premiers and politicians across Canada. Welcome, Crombie. How are you today?
Superb.
It's a beautiful day out there, and thank you for taking the time to speak with us today and to really give us an idea of the Crombie McNeill, of how you cut your teeth in this business, the evolution of where you've come from that brings you to today, and what you're doing in photo exposés today and your workshops.
It started when I was a child. My dad was a very avid and advanced, very respected portrait photographer, photographed me for Christmas cards. We had a business in the very same Hardy Arcade between Spark Street and Queen Street as Mr. Karsh, Yusuf Karsh. My dad was a friend of Mr. Karsh's, and he was a student of Mr. Karsh's. So I got introduced probably when I was about 4 years old. At age 7, I would hang out with Mr. Karsh, and I did some tidying up in the studio stuff, right?
From a young eyes, what did you learn from the Karsh experience?
Well, to be honest with you, it was so overwhelming at the time because it was big and it was very, very, very physical, right? Huge cameras, huge lights, big baffles, and all of that. In my dad's studio, it was much the same, but on a smaller dimension, right? Very, very difficult for somebody to grasp right off the bat, okay? I mean, extremely difficult. So to get isolated to a small, relatively speaking, Rolleiflex or something like that, then ultimately 35 millimeter, okay, well this was something you could sort of carry around with you.
Crombie, I'd now like to move to where you are now in your career with the accumulated decades of knowledge that you've got. Where are you focusing your efforts in photo education and mentoring?
It's a good question. If we go back now to the era of Yusuf Karsh, when I was a youngster, as a photojournalist, you kind of were rather glib about the disciplines of portrait lighting, and it's a true craft, okay. But you were doing things ad hoc. You were dealing with light as it existed in the situation. You were recording events. So you had some control, but nevertheless it was an event, and you were there, and so you had to adapt. Now, during this time, I also, with my wife, owned modeling agencies. We had to do photography. There was a lot of photography. Now it was disciplined photography under controlled lighting circumstances. So all of a sudden now you've got control of the light, and you also have control of the model. So now, oh boy, what do we do now? You can't tell a prime minister, no, sir, stand over here, or an athlete, no, do that again for me, would you please? So in doing this work now, it was very disciplined. So I had to learn the lighting techniques of Richard Avedon, George Horrell, Sarah Moon, all of these photographers. So you had to reverse engineer everything.
Did that take some spontaneity out of the process as opposed to the dynamic nature of sports journalism, or how is a controlled environment different for that?
This now you had to work at. This wasn't easy anymore.
Really?
You had to, once you learned it, now you could sublimate it, okay? It's almost a little like Zen. In other words, you have to keep repeating an action, and mixing things together so things become easy. But it does not come easily to any photographer, and almost specifically for a photojournalist, because you're dealing with the immediacy of things.
Crombie, give us an example of classic simplicity.
Well, here's a photograph that is classic simplicity, and it's also elegant. Now, first of all, let me say this. Most photographers, they go out and they'll buy maybe one studio light, right? Then they'll say, okay, if one's good, 2 is better.
Okay.
Oh, I'm liking this, right? Then 3 has to be better than 2, and they keep going, they keep going, and they keep going, right? And it turns into an absolute disastrous mess. So this photograph here is done with one light, and it's done in a style of Hollywood, and it's a photograph that is very similar to what would have been done by Horrell or Bull or Horst. Now, we're talking about simplicity. So this is not a photograph that it was done with huge arc lamps or great big huge soft boxes, electronic flash.
It's a gorgeous photograph.
Thank you. It is taken a piece of black material thrown over the back of a sofa. The light comes from a table lamp that I actually had, somebody was helping me, simply hold a table lamp that had the shade on it. It gave me this beautiful light on her, and I must say, and I must mention this, I get support from Sigma. This was done with a Sigma lens, ultra sharp, wide open. And this wasn't even on a tripod, it was a handheld shot. Yet, is representative of real craft using light with the right subject matter, but it actually is quite, I shouldn't say easy to do. Once you know these disciplines, simplicity can do it. So having a great array of expensive equipment, festooned with lights and everything else, and all this technology is not what makes a good photograph.